thanks for coming. And thank you for all of your generosity over the past year and years, and your faithfulness in serving, and just being a blessing to those of us who are on staff and have been called to be your pastors. It is we I I only do this because it is something that I feel called to, and it is a like it blesses me most deeply to see people invest in their own spiritual life and to grow. And so it is the greatest gift. I know that you're not doing it for me, but it is the greatest gift you could possibly give to your pastor, to invest in your own spiritual life, and to take leaps forward in your own faithfulness. Um, we are, because you guys are. Trinity is literally nothing without you. Jesus has called us together, and it is your faithfulness and want to follow that call that makes us who we are at all. So I am blessed to be here and to be your pastor, and to be with you through these extraordinarily strange and trying times. A couple of things that we're going to do. So we're just going to overview 2020. We are going to talk about some of the ways that we've tried to be good stewards of the resources that we have here at Trinity. We're going to look to 2021 and what budget stuff is going to look like, and other ways that we are trying again to be good stewards of your gifts. Um, and and then I'm gonna remind you of some of the ways that we have to give here at Trinity. Um, so first, a reminder of what 2020 was supposed to be like. We went into 2020 with a $603,000 budget. That was a slight pullback from the year previous, mostly made up of some shifting things around, and the lack of a nominating committee, because we got Pastor Kelly at the beginning of last year. So whoop, whoop, and that saved us like $10,000 on nominating committee costs. So we saw a slight reduction in our overall budget from 2019 to 2020, but mostly because of that. We went into this year with what we knew was going to be a deficit budget. We did not have the pledges to cover the whole of it. We regularly underspend our total budget, and we assumed we assumed like a bunch of dum-dums in hindsight that 2020 was going to be a pretty normal year, and that we'd see the church grow, and that we'd see a bunch of new people come in like we always do, and then 2020 happened. So it has not been the cheeriest of years. I think we are all on board for that statement. However, there has been an awful lot to give thanks for in 2020. The first thing that I would say is just sort of a personal note as pastor, is that I have been so grateful that I get to serve with people who have energy to serve, and grateful for a staff that has been more than willing to adjust how they do life and ministry, and willing to just sort of flow with the punches that this year has given. I mean, thanks be to God, we all have pretty good working relationships and relationships in general, and that has made the flow of this year a lot better. Because we really are trying to take care of one another so that we can take care of our church. And so I'm very, very grateful for that. Also, we came into this year with a pretty solid foundation, and I mean that in two different ways. You all and Trinity in general has just been a tremendously faithful and generous church leading into this year. You have striven well, and you all have leaned into the craziness that is this world. I mean, generally we wouldn't be doing this over Zoom. We would woo you with barbecue, and get you in the door that way, and we would eat together and we would share stories. And that's just one of the other losses of this year. However, here you are. And people have still been, joining in online. It's been really interesting to see just how, like, um, early on in the pandemic, people were pretty much everybody was watching service live on Sunday morning, and now, we've probably got about half to three quarters of our folks watching live, and everybody else picks up throughout the week. But people, again, it's just another way that people are adjusting to making this time work for them. Which in 2020, you do what you got to do. We're just making it happen. The other way that we've come into 2020 with a solid foundation is that the past, and I'm gonna hit on this later, but it's important, I think, to make note of now, is the past couple of years we have had a really tremendous generosity from the congregation. And so we have come out of a transition time from when Frank left to when Stephen was here and to when I got here, which was a very lean time. And we've been able to put a few dollars away so that now we have, we're not month to month living anymore. And this hasn't been as scary as it could have been. Because of that, which is to say, because of you. We've been able to create reserves because of your generosity. We have found, of necessity, new ways to present the gospel and the good news of Jesus in this time. In person, the removal of in-person worship has forced us into new ways of thinking about worship and other sort of tech heavy and video heavy responses to how we can still share some thoughts about the faithfulness and the good news of Jesus online. And so we've worked hard to do that. Thinking of some of the videos that we do midweek, even if you are not a child, Kelly has been very creative in some of the things that she's done. I mean, if you haven't looked at any of her chalkboard theology videos, they're great and really interesting and creative. She's, creating Bitmoji classrooms for the kids and things like that, which has all been great. And so we are grateful for that. We're also really grateful for the fact that this happened to us in the year 2020, because can you even imagine what this would have been like 25 years ago? It would have been very, very difficult. It's already been very difficult, but we are grateful for the connection that's been offered to us by our technological advances in this time. And thinking about the sorts of investments that we've made, and again, I'm going to hit on this in a few minutes, but the investments that we've made in the past couple of years that are really paying off in 2020, that have been sort of technologically minded. So we're grateful for that. And lastly, a blessing to us has been the fact that we were able to get about a $75,000 PPP loan, which has been something of a saving grace for us, and will allow us not to lose money, we hope, into the end of this year. Here are some of the ways that we've been trying to be faithful and to be good stewards of the gifts that have been given to this congregation. The first is in budgeting. We underspent intentionally our budget in 2020 when we realized that things were going to get hairy. We've adjusted our budgeting, and you'll see that here in a second. We've adjusted our budgeting in 2021 to reflect some pretty significant changes that we have experienced over the past year and a half. Year. Savings, like I said, thanks be to God and to you all that we have been in a position to put a little something away in cash reserves for a rainy day, and this is that rainy day. Hopefully, like I said, we won't even be in a position to have to use any of these funds, but we have them, which is nice. We have currently about $512,000 in undesignated cash reserves, which means they are available should we have significant budget shortfalls. And we have $628,000 in designated funds. That does include our building fund, which we'll talk about here in a second, and all of our other smaller designated funds, which are designated. If that is an unfamiliar term to you, that just means that they are designated to things like women's ministry or youth trips or an organ or all manner of things. We have a bunch of different small designated funds. And lastly, we've been really trying to be very good stewards with the gifts of money that we have been given. Up until a couple of years ago, we did not have any major investment tools. We just put most of our money was in savings accounts and things like that were low yield, and we have placed, using Edward Jones and the Texas Presbyterian Foundation, most of our funds in low to moderate risk investments that are actually going to make money for us, which is great, and which is what you all do with your money. So when you give it to us, we're also going to try to be the best possible stewards of it that we can. Any questions there? Okay. Our budget for 2021 is $566,000. That is a $37,000 reduction from 2020 and represents 6%. Most of our costs are fixed. However, we have trimmed every little bit of fat that we could find from our budget for 2021. You will see, if you had the other page in front of you, you will see that personnel and pastors' expenses make up a much larger percentage than they used to, but that is not because we are getting raises. That is because pretty much everything else has gone down. I'm going to move along to this next slide, which will tell you specifically what has changed. In terms of changes, we have pretty much everything except for staffing and mission took a cut this year. We have committed as sort of an internal goal to try to get to 10% of our overall budget given away every year to our mission partners. Last year we were at 7.2%, and in this odd world where everything else is being reduced, but we're going to maintain our mission giving. That means our mission giving percentage has actually raised. So we're now at 8.7% of our total budget. So we've actually been able to make ground on that goal in this year, even while we've seen other areas of our budget go down. Trinity, I understand from its founding, and Nancy, you were there. I understand that a very large percentage of Trinity's original budget was directed toward mission causes. Is that so? Do you recall what that percentage was?
I believe it was 20%.
That's what I've heard as well.
Yeah, and from a new congregation.
It's impressive. Yeah. And when your budget grows, I think it's naturally easy to say, well, we already give X amount of dollars. We don't necessarily need to grow that with everything else. But we have tried and we've made progress over the past couple of years. I want to say that percentage-wise, in the past 3 years, we've almost doubled in percentage what we've given away to our mission partners. And I know that the mission committee gets letters frequently from our mission partners saying thank you. These are meaningful gifts because they are. I'm thinking specifically of right now Evergreen Life Services. I don't know how many of you are familiar with them. They work with folks who have developmental disabilities and group homes essentially, but they're smaller and more family-like, and they have just been obliterated by the hurricanes that have come through, and they've spent millions and millions of dollars that they did not expect to spend. And so, our gifts to them have been, they've sent effusive thank you notes for our gifts this year, as all of our other mission partners do. So that is something that from from our very founding that we've tried to work back toward here in the past couple of years. Staff wise, again, we were not able to give any of our staff a raise in 2021. That includes Kelly and myself. However, we are grateful just to not have to let anybody go. Honestly, in the current climate, we are able to keep everybody whole. There is a slight reduction in the budget from year to year. That is not a reduction, a reflection on us making people work less hours. That's just a reflection of real hours worked, given the new state of affairs. Our building, that is where a large percentage of our overall drop has come from 2020 to 2021. We have rearranged our cleaning schedule, and we've reduced our auto costs, and we've reduced our equipment savings. Every year we put somewhere in the ballpark of, I think, $19,000 or $20,000 into a fund to prepare ourselves to have money when something breaks, because you all know, you live in houses, things break and trees fall and all those sorts of things. So we save every year for that. We've been very good stewards over the past couple of years. I think, we've taken some opportunities to make a bigger repair where a smaller one would have done, as a stopgap measure, because we had the money at the time, and we've replaced almost the majority of our AC units and things like that over the past couple of years. So we've reduced the amount that we're going to save next year because we have a nice little pot of money. So that's giving us breathing room. We'll come back to that in the years ahead and fill that fund back up. But next year, it looks like we're going to be able to take a slight reduction there. Otherwise, our other reductions have been in categories of budget. Christian Ed took a 10%, just sort of across the top. Music took a 25% decrease, and pretty much everybody else across the board has taken a decrease in their budget. And that is how we saved $37,000 in budget year to year. Speaking of being good stewards, here's some ways to give, and I'm going to circle back around to some points that I made just to reiterate. 2 years ago, we opened up online giving, and for essentially the very first time. And in 2019, to this point, only 19% of our donations had gone on the online system. To this point in 2020, 59% of all of our donations have been made online this year. So that is to say, thanks be to God that we made the move to get everybody sort of up to speed on what it looks like to give online a couple of years ago, because who would have known that it would become so vital right now? I know that a lot of people aren't online giving sort of folk, but there clearly are a lot of people who are, and this is just one more way that we can allow for people to set it and forget it if they would really like to do that. That evens out our giving across the year. That allows people to give while they're on vacation. If they forgot, they're like, oh yeah, it's Sunday, I'm going to watch online, and throw my donation in that way. And it also allows us to be more available to folks like myself, if I'm honest, the only check I write is a check once a month to the woman who comes to clean my house. That is it. That is the only, and she would prefer that I give her cash, but I don't have that either. So that is the only check that I write at all. Everything else I do is online. And I think that that is just sort of the way that finance is going. And the more younger folks that come into the church, they are going to be more similar to similar to me in that way than not. So I'm just very happy that we had this tool available, and I'm grateful for that. I think that sort of another example of putting ourselves in a position to do well is those building projects that we did that maybe we didn't have to do full scale. Like we didn't have to replace all of the units that we replaced, but they were old and we were just kicking that can down the road, but we did it. So that means that this year coming, we know that we don't have to expect that much, that sort of regular expense. Investment funds and using those tools to make us a little bit of quote unquote passive income, right? To fund the mission and ministry of this church are things that we hadn't done that we did and are now paying off for us into the future. The investment of a new sound system. I don't know even how many people really paid attention to this, but we bought a brand new sound system and we replaced dadgum near everything. And that has proven very good for us this year, as we've then invested this spring in some new video equipment that we've been able to integrate the two, and we're still working on that. But it's just these things that we did and pulled the trigger on and said we're going to put a little bit of money and resource into this have really paid off into this year. So we are so grateful for all of those things. Here's another way that we hope to continue growing and making good decisions now for future Trinity, and that is in legacy giving and estate giving and planned giving. This is something that I am sure you get letters from your alma maters about on a regular basis, and they probably try to convince you to give them money for all manner of things. And I would just say this, Trinity is something that you have given your, the stuff of your life to, not just your money, but your energy and your heart. And why wouldn't you want to give that gift after you are physically not able to be with us? So if you would think about remembering Trinity in your gift or in your will, and if you don't have a will, please get a will. I have friends who are financial advisors who have seen a flood of people getting their wills done after the pandemic sort of hit. So if that's something that you've been thinking about, do that and fit us in there. The chances that you are able to make a bigger gift that is going to sustain the church into the future upon your passing than you can give every year is highly likely. And if that is something that you are able to do think and pray on that, because that is, I was just talking to a colleague the other day whose church's endowment has been an absolute lifeline for them throughout this pandemic when they've seen giving drop. If that is something that you would like more information on, Texas Presbyterian Foundation has plenty of options for you there, or you can just talk to your own financial advisor or your the person who is doing your legal documents, and they'll help you that way as well. Any questions there? Okay. Next is the building fund update. Not a whole lot to report there, other than to say that currently it sits at $483,000-ish, which represents about a $20,000 increase from 2019. We encourage you, if you are able, you can give to that. Those funds are safe. They are not, if you have given money to that, they are not being used for anything. They are being invested. Scrip is ongoing. Pledges are still being made to that fund. We just rest assured that that nothing is happening to those funds. They are safely invested. We are not using them for anything. And right now, quite honestly, if I had a choice to make whether you were going to increase your building fund pledge or your regular giving pledge for 2021, I would encourage you to lean into 2021, because that's where we need you right now. And that isn't to say that we aren't going to come back to the building fund. We are. I have confidence that the next couple of years are going to be good. And I say that with full and complete confidence. And I'm not lying, and I'm not trying to paint a pretty picture that isn't true. I really do believe that things will be fine for Trinity. This is just a tough season, and it's going to be better. Honestly, we went through a time where we were we were turning a chapter in Trinity. We made this big move, right, to become an affirming and inclusive church last year, and we knew that that was going to cost us something, and it did. What we did not know, that we were going to do that, and on the back of that big shifting decision was going to come a global pandemic, and that has been really tough for all of us in a lot of ways. That being said, the future remains bright. we we are gonna be okay. So many people have already stepped up. I mean, I looked at the giving the other day just to get a where are we individually in gifts, and I saw that a person gave $10,000 above and beyond their regular pledge this year. Did not tell me about it, did not ask me for anything special to do it. They just gave it. I saw numerous people giving just smaller amounts over their regular pledge, a couple $100, $100 here and there. These things matter because there are, we received, I think this year, gifts from about 140 different people to our operating giving and our pledged giving. So those smaller gifts of a couple $100 over and above the giving that people already do, that matters in a year where we are having a deficit. And we've seen other people. I know somebody who is currently giving 18% of their total income this year because they pledged and they had a bad year financially, and they remained faithful to their gift because they know the church needed it, and they were able to do it. People believe in the ministry and the mission of this church. I believe in the ministry and the mission of this church, and the story that this church is telling through its life and through just who we are in North Texas and in this world. And so, like I said, we're going to be okay. I know that this has been a tough year, and I would never ask you if you absolutely cannot give more to give more. That's not who I am. I'm not going to tell you that Jesus is going to magically open the doors of heaven to you if you give more, because that's some nonsense. But I am reminded of people like my dad, right? Who, my dad, I know there were years where my dad gave like 50% of our income, and I did not grow up rich. We were on, we were in the WIC program. Was WIC something that people did here in Texas? Was that a national thing? Yeah, we were on WIC, and we were not rich people, but my dad believed more than anything that the money that he had, humble though it was God's, and that it literally wasn't right for him to take it from God because it was God's. And so he did every week. They would sit down, and he had his own plumbing and heating business, and he would sit down and look at what he'd made that week and just write a check for at least 10% off the top, because he believed that was what was right. You have to make the decisions for what is right for you now. But know that in the next year, because of the decisions that we've made as a congregation, and because of the hand that the world dealt us this year, we need your support in a way that we needed it, in a more urgent way than we've needed it before, to make budget for 2021. I was actually talking with Godwin the other day, and he shared a story with me that I thought was so great that I asked him to share it with you. Godwin, are you still there?
I am still here.
Would you?
I'd be happy to. And Jake and I were talking, and this is not a good time to give, and yet our church needs us to give. And so we were talking about that. Hopefully you can see this. This is a book by Marge Carpenter. Marge was the head of the Presbyterian Church for a while. Prior to that, she was a hard-drinking, cussing newswoman from South Texas, and she was a hoot. But she didn't. She would call folks out. And she challenged folks at all times to give, and she always heard now's not a good time. And she always thought, how do I answer folks that now is not a good time? And this is one of my favorite stories from the book. She said she got her answer in 1989 when the Presbyterian Church of Cameroon in Africa invited her to come to their 125th anniversary celebration. She said she had a wonderful week. They were really celebrating there. They had parades, were on television, they had concerts, they had worship services and banquets. It was a marvelous week. Then on Sunday, there were so many people that they had to hold the celebration outside. They put the altar outside the church, and 40,000 Cameroon Presbyterians sat up on the hillside. 8 choirs sang, they rattled things, played drums, danced around. It was a great event. Finally it got quiet, and there was a single drum with a single beat in the background, and she looked up to see what was happening, and she saw a line of Cameroon Presbyterian preachers processing in one by one, and they were singing in French. She said, I don't speak French, but I knew they were singing the church's one foundation is Jesus Christ our Lord, a song we all know. And she said, I knew we had done something right in Cameroon. As I flew home, I was thinking about that, and I wondered when we had sent missionaries to start this Cameroon Presbyterian Church. And I deducted 125 years from 1989, and it was 1864. And she said, I thought, that can't be right. That was near the end of the Civil War. There has never been a worse time in American history than the end of the Civil War. She said, Presbyterians were killing Presbyterians, brothers were killing brothers. It was the worst time ever in America. And so when she got back home, she looked up in the records, in the minutes of the General Assembly of 1864, and I found a report that under Foreign Missions Report said the world is watching us in our travail to see if we are serious about global mission and the Great Commission. And it named the first 3 missionaries that were opening a mission field in Cameroon. She then she said she paused for a moment, changing page here. I sat quietly for a long time, and I finally pulled down the minutes of the Presbyterian Church of the Confederacy, which was the Southern Church, what the Southern Church called themselves at that time. And under their Foreign Missions Report, it said, our backs are to the wall, and our homes are being burned, and our church is destroyed, but we must send another missionary to Brazil. And it named that missionary. Those 4 missionaries were sent out to greater sacrifice than anything we've done in a long time. It was the worst of the times for our country, and yet it was still a good time. And that story stuck with me because we are in the midst of a pandemic, and it is hard. And yet those Presbyterians in 1864 funded mission that incredibly touched God's world and made a huge difference in Cameroon and also Brazil. And who knows what our giving this year will touch in the lives of our mission partners. And so I hope we can all dig deep, because our church did take some strong stands. We're a smaller church because of it. So the remaining folks, we got to step up. And from that standpoint, it's a good time.
Thank you.
Thanks, Godwin. I will also say that I think part of the cost of this year is that you all don't get to see the new people who are walking in the door to Trinity, right? So this is a hard time, but new people have walked in the door of Trinity Presbyterian Church this year. And that really has taken the sting away from some of the pain of not being able to be together. So even though this is a hard time, God is still at work, and God is still calling us to be faithful. So if you are able, make your pledge and increase your pledge as much as you can. If that looks like 25% for you, awesome. If that looks like 0% for you, great. If that looks like 10% for you, fantastic. Whatever you can do, you are the person that gets to determine that, and that is your act of faithfulness. And that is more than anything what I'm trying to get across with this sermon series, is that your giving is not just the bill you pay to this church. It is your act of faithfulness with the resources that God has given you, because they all belong to God anyway. And that is where we find our hope and all of our joy. Trinity is going to be okay, and it's going to be okay because God has called you here and God is making you faithful. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And I'm looking forward to seeing what the next chapter that God writes here at Trinity is.